The desert sun blazed down on the endless stretch of highway in Arizona. The heat shimmered above the road like a mirage, and not a single car had passed in hours. In the distance, a lone figure stood beside a broken motorcycle. He was covered in dust, his face sunburnt, and his water bottle long empty. His name was Ryan, young, strong, but right now, completely helpless. He'd been riding across the country on his vintage bike, fulfilling a lifelong dream. It wasn't just a ride, it was a tribute to his late father, who had always wanted to take that journey but never got the chance. Ryan had spent 2 years fixing the old bike in his garage, piece by piece, just to do this. But now, stranded in the middle of nowhere, that dream was falling apart. The bike had coughed one last breath before shutting down completely. And then, nothing. No cell service. No water. No shade. And worst of all, no one stopped. Dozens of cars passed him by, speeding up even, as if a stranded biker was an inconvenience. Ryan waved. He shouted. He even tried pushing the bike for a while, but the heat was unforgiving. An hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. His legs gave out and he collapsed beside the motorcycle, his body trembling from exhaustion and thirst. He closed his eyes, thinking maybe this was it. Maybe his journey would end right here, on this lonely road. But then, a rattling, dusty pickup truck rolled into view. It slowed down, kicking up sand, and pulled over a few feet ahead of him. Ryan opened his eyes slightly, unsure if he was dreaming. A man stepped out. He wore greasy overalls, a torn cap, and carried the smell of engine oil and diesel with him. His hands were rough, scarred from years of working with machines. His name was Jack. "You all right, son?" Jack asked, kneeling beside him and handing over a bottle of cold water. Ryan couldn't speak. He grabbed the bottle with trembling hands and drank greedily. Jack took a look at the bike. "That's a '68 Triumph, isn't it?" Ryan nodded weakly. Jack smiled. "I used to work on bikes like these before everyone wanted the flashy stuff." He didn't ask questions. He didn't judge. He just rolled up his sleeves and got to work. For the next hour, Jack worked in the scorching heat, using tools from his truck, talking softly to the bike like it was an old friend. He didn't ask for money. He didn't care that Ryan looked like a drifter. He just wanted to help. Finally, the engine sputtered, then roared to life. Ryan couldn't believe it. The bike was alive again. Tears welled in his eyes. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. Jack chuckled. "You just did." Ryan took out his wallet, but Jack raised a hand. "No need. I help people 'cause someone once helped me. Just pass it on." They shook hands. Ryan rode away, looking back once to see Jack waving, his silhouette disappearing in the dust. 3 years later, a grand opening was taking place in downtown Phoenix. A massive garage, bigger than any shop around, with clean equipment, shiny bikes, and a bold name on the signboard, Jack's Classics. Cameras clicked, reporters gathered. Jack stood there in disbelief, holding a set of keys and a letter in his hand. His hands still smelled of oil, but now he was surrounded by success. Ryan stood beside him, in a crisp suit, smiling warmly. "I never forgot you," Ryan said. "That day in the desert, you saved more than just my bike, you saved me. Turns out, I wasn't just on a road trip. I was on my way to my future." Jack looked confused. Ryan continued, "When I got home, I wrote about what happened. That story went viral. A biker stranded, saved by a humble mechanic. People loved it. Investors noticed. A brand was born. And with the help of a few friends, I built a startup for classic bikes. We restore them, preserve history, and share the stories behind every engine." He paused. "But none of it would have happened if you hadn't stopped." Jack's eyes were wet now. "This place, this shop, is yours. You're the face, the heart, the soul of this company. You don't have to fix bikes alone in the heat anymore. You're a millionaire now. And every engine that roars out of here will carry your name. Jack couldn't speak. He stared at the garage, then at Ryan, overwhelmed. All he could say was, "Why me?" Ryan smiled, "Because everyone else kept driving. But you stopped." The crowd clapped. Jack's story inspired thousands. People came from all over the country just to shake his hand, to thank him for reminding them that kindness still existed in the world. Months passed. Jack's shop became a landmark. TV channels ran his story. Bike enthusiasts donated vintage motorcycles for restoration. Jack didn't change much, still wore overalls, still had grease on his fingers, but now, he had a team, a purpose, and a legacy. One day, a kid walked in with a broken down scooter. He looked poor, nervous, like the world had ignored him too. Jack smiled, knelt down, and said, "Let's take a look." Because he remembered what it felt like to be helped, and how that one act had changed everything. And that's how a simple act of kindness on a lonely road turned a forgotten mechanic into a millionaire, not in dollars alone, but in purpose, respect, and love. Sometimes, the richest people are the ones who give without expecting anything in return. Absolutely. Here's the continuation of the story to reach approximately 1500 words, expanding the emotional arc, deepening character development, and reinforcing the powerful theme of kindness returned. Weeks turned into months. Business boomed. Jack's Classics wasn't just a garage anymore, it had become a symbol of second chances, of humanity at its purest. One day, Jack sat in his newly built office, still modest compared to the scale of his garage. On the walls were photos of vintage bikes, handwritten letters from people he had helped over the years, and a framed copy of the original article Ryan had written, "The Man Who Stopped." Jack stared at it often, not out of pride, but disbelief. In his mind, he was still just a small-town mechanic who liked working with his hands and didn't trust suits or speeches. But people saw something more. One afternoon, Jack's assistant knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." Jack walked out to the main floor, wiping his hands on a cloth. A woman stood by the entrance. She was older, frail, maybe in her late 60s. Her clothes were worn. Her shoes had holes. But her eyes, they burned with familiarity. "You don't remember me, do you?" she asked softly. Jack looked at her closely. "No, I'm sorry. I'm Maria, from Route 19, outside Tucson. 30 years ago, you stopped when my car had overheated. My baby daughter was in the backseat." Jack blinked, memories rushing back. "You had no tools, but you brought us water from a creek and stayed with me until a tow truck came. I never forgot that." Jack was stunned. "I didn't even think you'd remember." "I did. My daughter grew up safe because of you. I told her that story every year on her birthday. Now she's a trauma surgeon in Dallas." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "This is nothing compared to what you deserve. But my daughter and I put this together. Use it for someone who needs it." Jack opened it. Inside was a check for $10,000. He didn't say a word. He just hugged her tight. Later that night, Jack sat under the stars, outside the garage. Ryan joined him, sitting on the curb with 2 beers. "You okay?" Ryan asked. Jack nodded. Slowly. "I used to think I was a nobody. Just a man with grease-stained hands and a squeaky truck. But I guess, every small kindness plants a seed. I just never thought I'd live to see it grow." Ryan sipped his beer. "You didn't just fix my bike, Jack. You made me believe in people again." Jack turned to him. "And you took that belief and built something. I'm just the spark. You're the fire." Ryan chuckled. "The fire. I nearly gave up until you came along." Jack looked thoughtful. "It's strange, isn't it? This whole thing started on a road no one else wanted to stop on. Ryan stood up, brushed off his jeans, and looked at the sky. Let's build something bigger. A foundation. We'll call it the Roadside Trust. Help stranded travelers, pay for car repairs, give scholarships to kids learning mechanics. Jack lit up. You serious? As a heart attack, Ryan smiled. Let's give the world more Jacks. Jack chuckled, his voice cracking with emotion. Now that's something I can get behind. A year later, the Roadside Trust was active in 12 states. Mechanics volunteered time. Donors from across the country supported it. Jack traveled from town to town, not as a businessman, but as a storyteller, sharing his journey in schools, biker rallies, community centers. In one high school auditorium, Jack stood before 300 teenagers. He didn't use slides. He didn't wear a mic. He just stood there, hands in his pockets. I wasn't rich. I didn't go to college. I didn't invent anything. I just stopped, when nobody else did. That's it. The students were silent, listening. And from that moment, everything changed. Not because I asked for anything, but because kindness never dies. It waits. It grows. And one day, it comes back to you, tenfold. A student raised his hand. What if I've already made too many mistakes? Jack smiled. So had I. You just start from where you are. Do something good today. That's all it takes. The room erupted in applause. Meanwhile, Ryan was busy expanding the company. But he never forgot his promise. Every major decision still had Jack's input. Every hiring, every sponsorship, every bike restored, it all reflected the values Jack had taught him. One morning, Jack walked into the garage and saw a kid sitting by the window, watching the workers. Hey there, bud. What brings you here? Jack asked. The boy looked up. He couldn't have been more than 13. I saw the bikes on YouTube. My dad used to fix engines before he passed. I like watching the machines. Jack smiled, motioning him to come closer. Wanna learn? The boy nodded eagerly. From that day forward, the boy came every weekend. Jack taught him how to check oil, how to use a wrench, how to listen to an engine's breath. It reminded Jack of Ryan, of himself. And one day, as Jack looked around the shop, he realized this place was no longer just his story. It belonged to all the people who'd ever been overlooked, underestimated, or forgotten. It was proof that kindness is never wasted. 5 years later, Jack sat in a rocking chair at the corner of the garage, now a national chain. His hair was gray, his hands slower, but his heart was fuller than ever. A little girl walked up to him and asked, "Are you the man from the desert story?" Jack chuckled, "Guess I am." She looked up with innocent wonder. "Why did you stop?" Jack looked at her for a long moment, then said gently, "Because someone needed help. And that's what good people do." The girl nodded like she understood something much bigger than her years. Ryan joined them, holding a cup of coffee. "We're being invited to the National Hall of Humanity next month," Ryan said. "You'll be honored for lifetime kindness." Jack shook his head. "I'm just a mechanic, Ryan." Ryan put a hand on his shoulder. "No, Jack. You're the reason thousands believe in kindness again. You changed lives, not by being rich, or famous, or powerful, but by doing the right thing when no one else did." Jack looked out at the row of restored bikes. At the young apprentices. At the families watching from behind the glass. At the roadside trust van pulling into the lot. He smiled softly. Then I guess, that old engine breakdown wasn't such bad luck after all. Ryan grinned. It was fate. And the two men, one who had been lost, and one who had offered him a hand, stood together, surrounded by the living proof that in a world moving too fast, sometimes the biggest impact comes from simply slowing down and stopping to help. Because one small act of kindness can change the road ahead for everyone.